The year is 1992. The Walt Disney Company's biggest gamble yet is about to open to the skeptical public of the European market. For over 4 years, Marne-la-Vallée was home to a complete landscape transformation that saw the construction of a 140-acre theme park, the biggest Magic Kingdom-style park yet, 5,800 hotel rooms distributed across 7 hotels, a shopping area based on Disney World's Downtown Disney, and a golf course. As a resort, EuroDisney was the biggest one at opening. While Disney World had more area, it only had 3 hotels and the Magic Kingdom. After what was a total investment of 24 billion francs or $4.4 billion for the construction alone, the resort was finally ready to open, and it did so on April 12, 1992. That day, visitors were warned about possible chaos in the roads surrounding Paris and EuroDisney, with a government survey indicating that 500,000 people in 19,000 cars might attempt to enter the complex. The radio warned traffic to avoid the area. It's possible that all those warnings worked out, maybe a little too well, as at midday the car park was only halfway full, suggesting an attendance level of just 25,000 people, a number quite lower than the 500,000 previously projected. Many put the blame of the lower-than-projected opening day crowds on the train strikes that supposedly made the resort inaccessible. But by August, it was clear that EuroDisney was in deep trouble.
Running things down. What's going on in France?
Well, we're taking a lot of heat. The media is having a great time trying to bury us before we are due to be buried. And the real estate market has bottomed out, not bottomed out, maybe, is very low. And we are not making enough money to make our European shareholders happy, and there's a lot of controversy about
So what happens?
What happens is we have to restructure with the banks, something that I've never had to experience. When we committed to the park, Europe was booming. When we opened, Europe was crying. And
you're not giving up, though?
We're not giving up, but we need 40 or more banks around the world, including in France, to help us rethink it. And I think.
And if they don't, you might close?
If they don't, we have what's called a liquidity problem. So a liquidity problem is a nice word for
cash flow.
We're in deep.
But Disney rides through things, don't they? I mean.
The grand opening of EuroDisney.
You know, for most of us, a quarter of a century from now seems a long way off. But for the Imagineers of EuroDisney, the year 2017 is as close as tomorrow. This is the model shop at Walt Disney Imagineering, where every detail of EuroDisney has been built to scale, and where plans for the next 25 years of EuroDisney are already being made. For as Walt Disney himself once said, Disneyland will never be finished as long as there are people with imagination, with new dreams and new projects somewhere in the world.
Plans for rides, shows, and innovations that won't see the light of day until today's children come here with their children. And so tonight is not only the beginning of EuroDisney, but the start of many dreams to come.
Boy!
The first months of EuroDisney have just passed. Everything is going well, the hotels are booked, the housing markets are strong, and the Parisian resort is turning a good profit. What comes next? Construction on several new attractions for the EuroDisneyland park are just starting. These include a completely new ride based on The Little Mermaid to be located at the entrance of Fantasyland. Here guests will embark on an under-the-sea voyage, as the beloved movie scenes unveil before them. The vehicles shaped as a shell are similar to that of Peter Pan's flight, as they're secured by the top. The immersive scenes recreate the movie, beginning in a dark room with shipwrecks and lightning. After being submerged under the water, you will find yourself in the colorful Under the Sea segment, as Sebastian sings a ear-catching song. Things then start to get darker as we move into the poor, unfortunate souls part of the ride, only to then see a 4.5-meter Ursula frightening guests. In true Disney fashion, all ends nicely as the Kiss the Girl music plays, and with this glorious finale, guests then exit the ride. Also in Fantasyland, a new immersive show will be available, this time based on the Beauty and the Beast. Located just by Pizzeria Bellanotte, you can enter the castle and the pre-show begins, projected in a stained glass retelling of the story of the prince and the old lady. You would then move into the main part of the show, in this round-style theater, similar to that of the Tiki Room. Visitors are immersed in several scenes from the movie as they play in the middle of the room and all around them. Characters such as Belle, Cogsworth, and Lumiere sing, dance, and interact with the audience. The show finally concludes with an animatronic transformation of the Beast into human form with the help of projections and other effects. Both these two projects would open in around 1994, just 2 years after the opening of the park. There were several other attractions planned to be incorporated in the main park during the following years. These include Splash Mountain at the back of Frontierland, which could perhaps have a new theme such as Pocahontas. Indiana Jones would also have a big presence at the back of Adventureland, becoming a mini-land in of itself. The idea was to use the older plans for the Indiana Jones and the Lost Expedition for Disneyland, created in the late 1980s. The upgraded plans would consist of 2 rides, both enclosed in the same complex, the Ore Car attraction and the Jeep attraction. The first one would be a roller coaster, which would have recreated the mine chase sequence of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, with minecarts running along volcanic caves. The second was to be a dark ride, which would have recreated other famous exploits of Indiana Jones, such as his escape from the giant rock boulder of Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Disneyland Railroad would enter the show building and chug across a wooden bridge through the complex. On the outside, the land would be themed to ancient temples, jungles, and mine shafts. The most well-known project, though, would be found in Discoveryland. Known as Discovery Mountain, this huge pavilion would house several rides incorporated inside and was planned from day one to be the first major addition after opening. The land was built so that later it would be easier to build this new project. Outside, the huge steampunk mountain had several iterations, from a more natural look to a more industrial one, which would be the one to be built in the end. Inside, it would be even more impressive, with 3 new rides to be offered. Journey to the Center of the Earth would be a drop tower inspired by the Jules Verne novel with the same name, to be located in the middle of the pavilion and feature a see-through enclosure. Horizons, the highly acclaimed Omnimover attraction from Epcot, would be cloned and brought into Paris. Here, visitors would pass through scenes depicting the visions of the future. And at last, a new roller coaster inspired by Space Mountain and the Jules Verne novel From the Earth to the Moon would have guests blast into space from a cannon in the outside, which would then pass around the enclosed top of the pavilion and even around the bottom part, where passing people would see the trains with great speed. Other experiences such as Star Tours would also be accessible through here, and new restaurants would be available, one being inside the Captain Nemo's Nautilus, where people would be able to dine in. All this was projected to open just 4 years later in 1996. Prepare to step through the gates of a Hollywood that never was. Disney MGM Studios Europe, a park that truly never made it off the drawing board, but was projected to open in 1995, just 3 years after the resort. Supposed to be twice as large as the current Walt Disney Studios park, and just like Hollywood Studios in Orlando, would have included actual studio production facilities. From the opposite side of the resort, there would be a new parking lot dedicated to this park. And like the other, here guests would board a red car trolley like the ones in California Adventure to get from the parking to the actual theme park. When arriving at the main gates of the park, a large Disney MGM Studios Europe sign welcomes guests. As we go through the main gates, we enter the front lot plaza, with shops on each side, lots of palm trees and a high towering Eiffel Tower. Passing over the square, we approach a huge soundstage based on the original Hyperion studio, the first studio Walt Disney owned. Inside the soundstage, we discover Hollywood Boulevard, a large indoor set resembling Hollywood at night. While walking towards the exit of Hollywood Boulevard, it becomes clear how huge this building actually is. The soundstage consists of 3 connected buildings. This would be almost 3 times bigger than the one in Walt Disney Studios today, and would even have a smaller recreation of the Hollywood Bowl where shows would be played throughout the day. After leaving Hollywood Boulevard, you come across a huge plaza with a beautiful full-scale Chinese theater, which houses the Grand Movie Palace ride, a European version of the Great Movie Ride, where a tram drives visitors through various movie scenes from European and American movies. Gangster Shootout would be another attraction present in the opening day, based on the Touchstone production Dick Tracy, combining the technology of the EMV used in the Indiana Jones Adventure in California with Buzz Lightyear Laser Blast. The facade has been themed to a huge factory complete with chimneys and bridges. In this attraction, guests would enter a 1920s car and race through the streets of Chicago, all the while being chased by gangsters. Guests would be invited to play along, each with their own pistol, shooting back at gangsters and other objects like garbage cans. These would be 2 of the 3 rides in the park. Being a real studios park, focus was shifted to showing the behind the scenes of real Hollywood productions, and many experiences could be found. Experiences such as the Magic of Disney Animation exhibit, showcasing Disney's proud tradition of hand-drawn animation, and a look inside the Parisian animation studios, where real animators would be creating Disney movies, shows, and other projects. Acting as a Disney European Studios, real productions would be filmed and created here. So, Imagineers divided this part of the park into 2. Attraction studios, in which guests could walk by and explore, and production studios, which wouldn't be accessible by the guests and would include several supporting buildings, sound stages, and the costume department. This part would also have its own entrance for the cinema or television projects being developed inside. At the back of the park, you would be able to find the Indiana Jones Stunt Show Spectacular, in an incredible Indiana Jones themed area. Here, a recreation of the Pankot Palace from the second installment of the franchise would serve as the entrance and facade of the theater. Other elements in this land would be an Indiana Jones shop and a recreation of the Pan American plane used in the films. The studio tram tour would be the major attraction of the park and would cover a lot of area. We start here at the load and unload station, then enter the impressive New York and waterfront backlots, possibly containing a scene inspired by the movie Gangs of New York. After that, we enter a narrow street with several trees, pass under a pedestrian bridge. 2 of these would exist so that the trams could cut through the park while guests walked over them. 2 small sets appear, one from George of the Jungle and one showing a medieval castle. We then exit this slower and narrow street and arrive at the non-accessible part of the park, the production studios. We can get a look at this part with everything we couldn't previously see, and if you're lucky, a real production is happening as well. The visitors then arrive at a huge warehouse that goes by the name European Backlot Streets. This would be a similar set to the New York streets, but inside, during the night, and based on European cities and perhaps movies. After exiting the big soundstage, we make our way to Catastrophe Canyon. The tram continues to move and we make our way back to the station and guests exit the trams. This park would be so much bigger than the Walt Disney Studios that ended up in the resort, with many attractions, experiences, shows, and restaurants. Similarly to Hollywood Studios in Orlando, it's likely that it would have evolved just like that. with expansions such as Sunset Boulevard, with Tower of Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster, and others. Behind the Sequoia Lodge Hotel and Hotel Santa Fe, a new park would be built, but this time it would be EuroDisney's first water park. This highly themed water park would be called Lava Lagoon and had a projected opening date of 1995, but with other possible openings to better spread the novelties throughout more years. The main reason to build this park wasn't for it to be a destination for European visitors, but a way for hotel guests to extend their stay with new activities and experiences, and so to keep hotels full. Lava Lagoon would be an incredible sight to see, but one of the most important factors of building a water park in Paris wasn't avoided: the weather. Since the winters are very cold with snow in most, the park would be divided into two main parts, the indoor and the outdoor sections. Inside, with its tropical plants and water slides, would remain open during all year long, while outside would only open during the summer and warmer months, which would double the capacity of Lava Lagoon. There would be a couple of slides and raft runs outside as well, and a large beach facing the lagoon. The beaches inside the dome would feature volcanic black sand, while the lagoon would be lined with beautiful white sand. The lagoon also connects to Lake Disney, allowing boat access to the resort hotels and Disney Village, and across from the water park would sit a new resort hotel. As seen in this plan of the park, the domed indoor area would be an impressive sight to see. Rising from the heavily themed ground, there would be a huge volcano, the centerpiece of the park. This massive volcanic peak would be called the Big Kahuna. Down its slopes would stream a number of slides, and it would be circled by several winding paths and lazy rivers. At the base of the volcano would be a large wave pool called the Great Pacific. Surrounded by lush tropical vegetation and the South Pacific theming, the volcano would be surrounded by a number of exciting features. You can see in the image that the Kahuna would be riddled by a number of paths and slides. The major slide for thrill seekers would be Pill's Plummet, which you can see streaking down the east side of the mountain. On the west face, feeding into the Great Pacific, is the steamer. Where it runs into the wave pool, there are the rapids called the Caldera Curl. It's possible that this could be for surfing. On the south face of the volcano, you can make out three slides: Lava Loop, the Spouting Horn, and the Plunge. There's also a tunnel passing underneath the volcano. On the north face, there are two winding walkways. The Rim Run winds through the mountain while the Walk of Fire seems to lead to the Sizzling Stones. Raft rides, lazy rivers, slides, and other activities would all be a major part of the attractiveness of this park. But for many, the real attraction of Lava Lagoon would be the amazing tropical and tiki theming. The top level of the indoor area would feature restaurants, shops, and other facilities such as saunas. I can only imagine that the snacks and beverages would also further immerse visitors in the environment. When Disneyland Paris or EuroDisneyland hotels come into conversation, it's very noticeable that all of them have very strong American themes. Hotel New York, Newport Bay Club, Sequoia Lodge, Santa Fe, and Cheyenne are all based on American locations. This was made on purpose, so as to give guests a feel of a classic car trip around the many US states. What is very much less known is that a completely new and different area was also planned for the future. With the ever-growing experiences, attractions, and overall capacity of the parks, new hotel rooms would have to be built. Still on the main area, around the famous lake, there would be a massive convention center and hotel. This would complete the American-themed area. Then, as time went through and more capacity would be needed, a new area would emerge, and with a new theme, this time to be centered around European countries and locations. Here, it's possible to count up to 8 new hotels. Unfortunately, the theme of them all is unknown, but in the center of the hotel-filled lake would rest a recreation of the very famous Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy. It's possible that this would have been more of an attraction than a hotel, but guests would be able to sleep in this famous recreation. This is one of the very few concept arts available for this new area of hotels, and as seen, there would also be a lot of shops and restaurants that would really bring this whole area of hotels to life. On the left of these hotels would be a shopping and office district, similar to the much bigger Val d'Europe that is present in today's Disneyland Paris. The other concept art shows a train station that would be available in this area as well. This one seems to be inspired in the famous Bordeaux train station, with the glass ceilings, walls and clock. This would connect this area with the main train station just by Festival Disney, now Disney Village, and theme parks, and the rest of Paris via the Regional Express Network or RER. Talking about transportation, from looking at the plan, it's clear that boats would be available to get to all the hotels and restaurants around the lake. This would be in addition to the buses that take guests all around the resort. But there's one more means of transportation that would complement the buses, boats, and RER, and that is the monorail. The monorail is a staple of Disney resorts around the world, being available in Anaheim, Orlando, and Tokyo. With the size of the resort getting bigger, this new transportation method would be incorporated to not only give one more choice to the guests, but act as an attraction on its own. The concrete monorail paths are unknown, but it's possible that it would have looked something like what this overview plan showcases, with stations in several of the hotels, but the main ones being the Parks Plaza and Festival Disney, and the Lava Lagoon and Third Gate. This sketch is one of the only pieces of evidence of its existence, and shows the monorail passing by the Newport Bay Club with the Disneyland Hotel at the back, and even what seems to be the convention center, which looks quite similar to a certain hotel in Florida. The design of the monorail would be completely new and unique for EuroDisney, as it was inspired by the French love of high-speed trains and based on the real TGV trains that can be found throughout France. Now, focusing on what we can see to the right, we come across the last piece of the puzzle. Epcot was the first non-castle park Disney had done, and was the second gate of Walt Disney World, which opened in 1982. The park is separated into two main parts: Future World, where attractions such as Spaceship Earth, Horizons, The Land, and World of Motion could be found, and World Showcase, a sort of permanent World's Fair where 11 countries are represented, each in their own pavilions with restaurants, shops, and rides. While Epcot is the original park, the third gate in Paris wouldn't be based on this one, but a park that has never been built: Westcot. In the early 1990s, Michael Eisner challenged his Imagineers to come up with a master plan that would completely change the original Disneyland in Anaheim. The idea was to change everything from roads, hotels, parking, shopping, everything. New hotels would be built, with special shopping and dining areas surrounding a man-made lake, and new attractions for Disneyland would be developed, such as Indiana Jones Adventure. But in the center of it all lies a second theme park, a true successor to Disneyland. While Westcot would be based on its sister park in Orlando, it was completely different. After entering the park, visitors would come across a huge 90-meter golden geosphere in the middle of a lush green island. This compared to Epcot's 55-meter Spaceship Earth. By crossing a bridge under a waterfall, you can ascend to the globe and ride the next generation Spaceship Earth, or you can proceed to Ventureport. This is a futuristic gateway from which guests can embark on magical journeys to the Wonders of Westcot themed pavilions. These would be Wonders of Living, Wonders of Earth, and Wonders of Space. On the perimeter of the park lie the 4 pavilions of the World Showcase, again very different from Epcot, as this time these would be known as the 4 corners of the world: Asia, Europe, the Americas, and Africa. Altogether, the pavilions would form the 7 wonders of Westcot. Instead of individual countries, the 4 corners of the world would incorporate entire regions. First stop, the New World, the Americas. The entrance would be a companion to Disneyland's Main Street. A Native American Spirit Lodge would represent Canada, and the Mexican Fiesta Show and restaurant would provide an opportunity to have a margarita and rest. Inca and Aztec spirit shows would add energy to this pavilion. and an updated version of the American adventure would be the centerpiece attraction. The Old World, Europe, is our next stop. This area would combine high-tech shows and tested attractions. The Circle Vision film The Timekeeper could find a home here. A cancelled Russian pavilion would also be incorporated, a Greek amphitheater would provide additional entertainment, the kids would have fun in the Tivoli Gardens playground, and a James Bond-style chase aboard a Trans-European Express Railroad featuring famous European buildings zooming past outside the window would be the must-do attraction. The World of Asia would boast one of the park's big thrill rides, the Dragon, which would have been a roller coaster that follows along the Great Wall of China into the Dragon's Teeth Mountain. The trains would be designed to look like a Chinese lion dragon that you would often see in parades. Architectural details from Japan, China, and India would be blended together to create a memorable environment. In the world of Africa, you could take a raft ride down the fictional Congo-Busy River, listen to African drummers, wander through a farming culture exhibit, or an Egyptian palace. The park would have featured the longest Disney ride ever, connecting 4 corners of the world and future world, the River of Time. The entire loop would take about 45 minutes, and you would be able to enter or exit at any of 5 points. The trip would take about 9 minutes between each stop. Between stations, you would experience scenes similar to those at Epcot's Spaceship Earth, but related to the land you are following under. The scenes would tell the story of the cultures of each pavilion and the evolution of world civilization. When you exit the boat, the station environments would support the scenes you have just witnessed. This park was never built in California, and many blame EuroDisney for this. But if things had gone well, it would have been built in Paris as well. While some changes would probably have happened to better suit the European market and interests, this is pretty much what would be found side by side with EuroDisneyland Park and Disney MGM Studios Europe. The projected opening date? From 1999 to 2002, depending on the other novelties around the resort. If everything had gone according to projections and the plan, Disney resorts around the world would look very different, and so would the Walt Disney Company. Disney California Adventure, the lackluster park, would have never opened, but Westcot. Hong Kong Disneyland would also be very different, as would Disney World. But the one that would be the most unrecognizable might have been EuroDisney, with the many new hotels, the non-existence of the worst Disney park, Walt Disney Studios, and the Eurocot Westcot Third Gate. Unfortunately, things don't always go according to plan, and EuroDisney wasn't the success Disney was hoping for. It can actually be argued that it was a failure, and Disney's biggest one at that. But looking at the future, with Disneyland Paris performing much better, would it be possible for some of these plans to become a reality? I guess only time will tell. Thank you so much for watching this absolutely huge video. It's been in the pipeline for several months, and I couldn't be prouder of how it turned out. Huge thanks to the Generation EuroDisney, EuroDisneyDreaming, Yesterland, and Retro WDW for all the info, videos, and photos. Make sure to check the sources and credits down below. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Discord. And now, as always, that's a wrap.